Hello, welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. I make music as Afro DJ Mac. I'm a producer, musician, educator. I teach Ableton Live at Berkeley Online and over the internet. Right now, I've got a pretty cool sale at my site, afrodjmac.com. If you're listening in the Black Friday, Cyber Monday season of 2018, you can get any Ableton Live pack that I've made for half price. And I try to make unique, interesting live packs that will help you create your own sound so that you can be unique and stand out from the crowd. I'm here today to talk to you about some lessons I learned from Ableton Loop. So 2 weeks ago, I got the chance to go out to LA to see the Loop Summit. If you don't know what Ableton Loop is, it's called a summit for music makers. It's a little bit like a convention for, say, like Comic-Con or something along those lines, in which people with similar interests gather and talk about what's going on in their world. I wouldn't quite say it's like NAMM or the AES convention, for instance, because it's not about sales and new products. And it's not even really about Ableton or Ableton Live or any of their products, which is really nice. It's really just a chance to get a bunch of like-minded creative people together and see what happens. I really appreciate this type of vibe because it encourages you to talk to new people, meet new people, and share creative thoughts. The overall climate of Loop was just really welcoming and friendly. Everyone is on the same page and willing to share and happy to meet you and talk to you. It was such a nice, refreshing thing because so often we are a little nervous or weird around talking to new people, but this was nothing like that at all. Really excellent event. And there were some pretty cool lessons that I learned from it. And those lessons are the subject of today's show. So let's start with the first thing that I picked up on at Ableton Loop. And it's really the entire spirit of the event. And it's that it's all about community and making relationships. And this was set out right from the beginning at the opening address given by Dennis DeSantis. Dennis is the head of documentation at Ableton. He writes the manuals. He's also the author of Making Music. It's 74 Creative Strategies for Electronic Music Production, I believe is the full title. The book is incredible. It's divided into 3 sections: problems of beginning, problems of progressing, and problems of finishing, I believe are the 3 sections. But it takes you through those 3 steps of the music production process, and they are the places where we all get stuck. Sometimes we don't know where to start. Sometimes we don't know how to develop our ideas. And very common, we don't know how to finish the ideas. The book is excellent. You got to check it out. But the first thing he really made clear is that while there were panels, while there were discussions, while there were meetups, performances, it's important to remember that you are part of Loop. So he's speaking to the audience. Everyone there is part of the experience. And we were encouraged to reach out to each other, talk to each other, share ideas. And this was really the entire weekend for me. Even like when you arrive, they give you a little bag of a whole bunch of stuff, lots of cool things, including a random record from Amoeba Records that you were encouraged to sample. We'll probably do something with that in the future. There's a name tag so that people can find out a little bit about who you are. A notebook that's blank so you can write down ideas and thoughts. And I found that that's really how everybody was. They were super open, really happy to talk to you, meet you, find out what you were doing. And throughout the weekend, I ran into a lot of people that I knew over the internet, whether I've watched their videos or taken courses or downloaded their stuff or had conversations on this podcast with them. I got to meet them in real life for the first time. And it was pretty cool. And there was a really warm, open and receptive feeling every time you ran into one of these people. And even people you didn't know, it was very easy to just smile at someone and say hello, how you doing, introduce yourself and find out what they're doing. And it really proves the point that a lot of what we do is about making connections, making community, growing relationships. I find more and more that so much about what you get in life is what you give. I think often to that quote from John F. Kennedy where he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." And kind of thought about it in reference to the music community. It's Ask not what the community can do for you, but what can you do for the community? And I found that by just seeing what people are doing, asking them about their work, it creates interest in your own work. And they want to find out what you're up to. You seem like an interesting person, being interested in me. So what are you doing? So much of that sharing was going on. And that was really, in my opinion, the most exciting part of the entire weekend. There were incredible workshops. There were some really awesome people that I got to see on stage performing. And while that was great on its own level, having those personal connections was really special. And I think as a result of this, you'll probably be hearing some interviews on this show with a lot of cool people that I met and a lot of people I'd like to reach out to, kind of now with the confidence and the feeling like maybe they would want to talk to me if they were there. They understand that idea of community and sharing ideas. So I'm excited for the future of this podcast just because I'll have the chance to sort of keep that spirit alive and talk to people and share ideas. It's really, really important to do. And it can really enrich your music. So get involved in the community, participate online, get involved in discussions. I would always encourage you to keep it positive. We don't need more negativity in the world. And even if there's something that you're not happy about or you don't like, or you hear some music you're not interested in, I'm sure there's something interesting you can take from it and something valuable and positive you can offer. And to look for ways in which you can contribute to the community. It's amazing what happens when people like that get together and start sharing ideas. I've come away feeling extremely inspired, and I think we can all get a little bit of that just in our daily lives. It's probably worth mentioning that everything I say here is the result of my experiences and the things that I've had the opportunity to attend, so others may have some different perspectives, and it's definitely worth checking those out. One of the talks that I went to was called The Best Laid Plans. And this was a talk about how things go wrong and how mistakes will happen. And it was a very entertaining talk. It was given by Laura Escude, who was on this podcast, Patrice Rushen, and Fote, two other people I hope to get on the podcast, and also moderated by Dennis DeSantis, another person that would be great to have on the show. And what I love about this is there was a lot of openness about things that went wrong. Because here are some people at the top of the game musically that are doing some really incredible work. And we probably only really see kind of the triumphs, but they were open and candid enough to share the things that go wrong. And it's important to realize that mistakes will happen. That's just a fact of this game. Things will go wrong. The speakers really emphasize the importance of being prepared and knowing what to do. So that might mean having a redundant system, which might not be always practical for many of us, but if that's at all an option, it's a great thing to have a system that you can turn to and go back to if you say your computer fries or something. But what I want to get to that might be a little more useful to people that don't have multiple systems to bring out to shows is being prepared, knowing what to do and how to react when things go wrong. Because, like I said, they will go wrong. We can really get emotional when things happen. We get excited for our shows and our performances, and we want them to go perfectly. But I think it's really important not to get angry and frustrated when these things go wrong. There's really nothing good that comes out of it when you see a performer get upset and angry. Say a guitar string breaks or the computer crashes or whatever. No one wants to see them throw a fit. Although we may all be upset, it's not working out. This is actually an opportunity. This is a chance to even make the show unique in some kind of weird way, because this doesn't happen all the time. You can use this as an opportunity to connect with your audience. So incorporate it in your show. Make a joke, laugh, let the audience in on it even. It can be a great way to deal with what's going wrong. I think you can have a lot of fun with this and get a laugh, and that gives the audience also a chance to just see who you are as a person and connect with you and kind of make you more human. Patrice Rushen had a fun story about Prince. She worked as a music director for the Grammys. Prince was performing, and they wanted Prince to change his show last minute after they'd already rehearsed. And the advice she gave to Prince and to everyone sitting there was, do what's best for you. And that's something important to remember, to follow what's right for you when you're in these situations. I think we can all avoid catastrophic problems if we don't change things too much before we have a performance. So this might mean not remapping your MIDI controllers or getting a new MIDI controller, incorporating new instruments into your set, because that can throw you off. In the heat of the moment, when things are going down, you don't want to have to remember the way you set things up. You want to be used to it. You want it to be second nature. I've done this myself where I've tried to bring in, say, a new MIDI controller or change some of the aspects of my live set. And I've never had anything super catastrophic happen because of that, but I have found myself having these moments where I was like, oh, what did I do with that button? What did I change this to? And having to wonder and think about what was going on. And that's not a good feeling. It's like, all of a sudden you're lost, and you don't want that. So not changing things too much was one of her points. And that's kind of why she gave Prince that advice, not to, or to do what's best for you, because even though there was pressure to change things, she kind of said, don't, because we've rehearsed it perfectly the way it is. Why change it in the 11th hour? So that's sort of under the umbrella of like being prepared and knowing what you're doing and not trying anything too crazy on the night of the show when it actually counts. I attended a workshop called Making Music Education Transformative. And education is a big part of what I do every day. And I think it's so important for all of us to stay in the mindset of being lifelong learners. However, school is often not a great place to do learning. And as a teacher, sometimes I do a lot of unteaching things that my students learn. And I think this really comes down to a very simple idea that a lot of schoolwork is not real. Just as an example, if a student is writing an essay that they're practicing for some state exam, they're going to take that essay one day in their life on the day of the test, and that's it. It's done. So they spend all this time preparing for it, something that they'll do once and never have to do again. I mean, think about it. When was the last time you wrote the 5-paragraph essay about the theme of a book, for instance? It's just not something we do. But we do write and we do communicate all the time. It's important to make our education experiences real. And often what makes these experiences in education authentic is the audience. So having the teacher as your audience is not a good enough audience. It's not real. There's no teacher in most things we do in life. There's no one person we turn something in. I would encourage you in your music to make sure you have some kind of audience. And of course, we want audiences and we dream of millions of people listening to our tracks, but maybe get involved in something smaller, even a group of producers who are also making music, who are also doing things. Get involved in some projects. There's plenty of groups online doing this sort of thing, and it gives your music an actual audience to listen to it. But it's not just about people listening to your music. It's also, again, about the community. It's about you listening to their music. I sat in on a listening session with Foodman. I've talked about Foodman on the show before. Japanese producer, does some really cool stuff. Strange, but very cool, interesting music. And we basically just listened to one of his songs, and then we listened to some music from people that were in the session. And it was small, about, 20 people in the room. And I didn't have any of my music playing, but it was still very valuable to talk about what other people were doing, to share ideas, to make comments, to make suggestions or positive criticisms, I maybe might say, or to just riff on ideas and expand on things that you found interesting that were going on in that music. And as a result of that, I found that I actually had some great conversations after the session with these people. And again, it was a little bit about sharing about their work that gave value to my own work. And one of the fun side things about this session, Foodman had an interpreter to translate everything into Japanese and from Japanese back into English. And it was just really cool to see how music was able to transcend the language barriers and bring people together. So once again, this community aspect is still very strong. Now, getting back to the education being transformative session, Lawrence Gray had an awesome quote that I just want to throw out there to you guys, where he said, "The mind grows as big as the box it thinks it's in." And this is such an important thing to keep in mind, that you will probably go as far as you think you can go. And we have a lot of limiting beliefs that prevent us from doing things. And I mean, I can be honest, when I first got the Loop, I was very shy about talking to people, but that was shed very quickly. And, suddenly thinking like, you can't approach this person. As soon as you start thinking that you can, well, then you do it, you act that way. So we behave with those beliefs in our mind. We will do things that we think we have within our ability to do. And we act like people that are able to do those things. And we'll also act like people that aren't able to do those things. Try to see if you can notice when you are putting a box around your ability or potential, because that in itself is something that you can really shatter. And in this meetup with the teachers, it was really nice to see some actual examples of students who started out thinking they were either not good enough for friends even, or not good enough to make music, or just not good enough. And when they got in these programs, they suddenly learned that no, they are, and they can share their music and make relationships with other people, and it actually improved their lives. I've seen this a lot in my own work, where if you believe you're not good enough, you'll act like you're not good enough. So the mind grows as big as the box it thinks it's in. So how big do you think your box is? Maybe it's time to make that box a little bit bigger. Big thanks to Lawrence Gray for pointing that out. And also, Lawrence Gray, I think he did a really cool thing in inviting some of his students to the talk and playing some of their music for the audience. These young kids are sitting in a room full of very interesting people in the music industry, some people doing incredible work, and to have their music played and then applauded, I just can't imagine something more validating and more encouraging for those students than that kind of reception from the crowd. And I think Lawrence Gray did an awesome thing with that in his group. They're called the Young Producers Group. Outstanding work. Hoping to get him on the show sometime too. Now, I've been talking a little bit about some of the actual events I was in, but I think it's worth bringing up a couple things that stuck with me after the weekend that just came up from talking to people that were at the event. So this whole idea of that everyone at Loop is part of Loop and is part of this whole discussion. So I'll give you 3 things, and that is in spirit actually of the first one I'm going to give you, which was the rule of threes. Oh, there go my dogs. Sorry about that. Could have locked them out of the studio, but I didn't have the heart to, so hope you don't mind. But anyway, the rule of threes was something that I heard from Underbelly, who was on this podcast, and Zach Kerstetter, who I think will be on the podcast soon. They were just talking about a technique for making changes in songs they call the rule of threes. And the idea is that in order to make a change noticeable and effective, 3 things should happen. 3 things should change. So that might mean 3 new sounds or 3 things go away, but to think about 3 things happening. I just thought that was a great formula, because a lot of times it's hard to know how to make new sections, how to make songs flow into new parts, but having a sort of rule to follow, like rule of threes, well, might be not the only thing you need to do, but it's a great start, a great thing to think about. So maybe try that next time you're kind of trying to figure out how to make parts flow into each other, how to do rule of threes stuff to make things happen. There's another discussion I had, and I don't even remember who I was talking to be honest. Some of the weekend is a blur, but we're talking a little bit about space and how space is actually part of your sound or your timbre. Space is an element. It's almost like an instrument. And I do remember reading this in Steven Tyler's book. Is the noise in my head bothering you? I think is what it's called. But he talked about how the room is an instrument and how important that is. Where you're recording adds a lot of energy to what you're doing. I think that when I first started working inside a computer, digital recording, that's something I struggled with because everything was too clean. There was no atmosphere to the sound. Even a tape has a constant hiss, and that sort of creates a world for the music to sit in. But in the computer, everything is just silent. There's nothing there. So thinking about maybe using reverbs to add that, or the room you're recording in. I've experimented recording in lots of different rooms, and sometimes you'd be surprised at what that can do to change your sound. If you find a place that has a cool, interesting reverb, it might be a nice place to do some work. And even layering in field recordings. So sometimes I'll even just have a mic going, just picking up air, just to add the air, or maybe get some nature sounds or some background noise of any sort of kind can really add a nice space to your music. So think about the space in your sounds. Like, where is your song taking place? Where is this world you're creating? And that's something that I remember speaking to Isaac Kotek, Subaqueous, about. He's also on this podcast too. But we were talking about the idea that creating actual worlds of music, places to have your song. That's really what you're creating almost, is this world. So space is part of your timbre, your sound. Space is part of your instrumentation. And the final thing really that I'll share with you is with Josh Spoon, another Ableton certified trainer and guest on this podcast. Josh and I were talking a lot about like focusing your energy with your music and paying attention to what your direction is and the types of things you're trying to do. I had this conversation with Patches on their podcast. We called it Doing It Deliberately, and deciding like what it is you're actually trying to do, and then using that to make decisions about like the types of work you do, the types of projects you take on. I think that's really important to think about, because it's very easy to just get swept up in doing things just because you want to be part of doing something and you don't want to miss out. The fear of missing out kind of thing is big. And if we just use the fear of missing out to decide what we're going to do, we might wind up with work that's very scattered and not focused. And I've definitely gone through that myself, but it was nice to verbalize this with some people in person and understand how they deal with it and what we can do. So this idea of focusing your work and doing what is important to you and knowing what you're trying to create. There's a lot I could say about Loop, and I think there's a lot that you'll be seeing coming out. Ableton filmed pretty much everything going on. There was always someone videoing just about everything. And there's also been some really nice write-ups already, and I would like to just direct you to a few of those. Ethan Hine, he has a great blog post about it. All these will be in the show notes, by the way. Synthtopia has a nice write-up too. And I finally got to meet the editors of Synthtopia, which was really nice. Excellent people who have been so supportive of my work and just integral to the music production community and sharing what's going on, keeping me up to pace with what's going on and everyone else. It's a fabulous site, synthtopia.com, and it was great to meet the people behind it. Then there was also a nice write-up from Sonic Bloom. Now, this wasn't Madeline from Sonic Bloom who wrote this. Madeline was a guest on the podcast. You should check out her episode. That's a great one. But she did have someone that did attend Loop write up about it, and it's a very nice perspective and lots of things that I didn't get to attend. It was really nice to read up about. So that's definitely worth checking out at sonicbloom.net. And then Slink did a video, his experience at Loop 2018. And I got to meet Slink, which was really cool. I've loved his work. He does awesome videos, really great tutorials. He's a very creative thinker with music production. And he was actually there for my own presentation, which was an honor for me to see him sitting in the crowd, and spoke about it a little bit on his experience video. But it was nice to talk to him and just share his good energy and good vibes as well. And he's got a great video. It's definitely worth checking out because he covers a lot of cool stuff that went on at Loop and a lot of stuff that I didn't get to see as well. And maybe we'll leave it at that now. I want to make music because I'm very excited about some of the stuff that happened and the people I got to talk to. And just the overall vibe of Loop was excellent. Definitely keep an eye out for some of those videos as they come out from Ableton and anyone that does write about it. Check out the posts I told you about. All those links are in the show notes. And remember, it is all about community. We are human beings, we are social creatures. It's about sharing, it's about interacting. So get involved, find communities, find online communities if you have to. Comment on people's works. Let them know that you're listening. And don't do it with the expectation of it getting anything in return. Do it in the expectation of you're offering help and you're offering a friendly ear, I guess. And you'll be surprised at how that can come back to you in the end. So thanks a lot for listening to the Music Production Podcast. We'll be back with some more episodes real soon, and some really cool guests are in the work thanks to this experience at Loop. So I hope you enjoy those. All the best to you. Take care.